Hey everyone, welcome to Movie Marathons HQ, where we do movie marathons connected to new releases and where we enjoy and review some of our favorite movies. This video is part of the Toy Story 5 movie marathon, where we are watching one movie every week as we prepare for the release of Toy Story 5 in June 2026. Today we are discussing Toy Story 4, released in 2019 and directed by Josh Cooley. This is the follow-up to the very successful Toy Story trilogy, and here we see the continued adventures of the toys, but now they are in the care of Bonnie instead of Andy. Overall, I think this movie is okay. I don't think it really holds a candle to any of the three original Toy Story movies. It has a few things that are enjoyable, but quite a few things that I think don't work. So overall, it's my least favorite of the Toy Story series so far. For positives, I'd mention the animation, the humor, the existence of an anchor song in this movie, even though it's just okay, and some of the new characters who are introduced. And for negatives, I would mention just the concept of Forky that I don't think works and is actually somewhat disturbing, and some of the characters and sequences which I think are actually quite scary for a Toy Story movie. Spoilers ahead for Toy Story 4. So the animation in Toy Story 4 is top-notch. As we've come to expect from Disney Pixar, their animation studio is just about unmatched in most of what they do. And here in Toy Story 4, it's no exception. Some of the scenes and environments where the toys go really put the animation through its paces, and it holds up extremely well. There's lots of dust particles in the air, and when they get into the antique store, there's just dust everywhere, but it reacts to them as they move through, which they didn't really need to do as an animated movie, but they have a lot of real world reference, and some of the animation looks really good and really smooth. Next, the humor in this movie is pretty good. I had mentioned in Toy Story 3 I didn't think the humor worked all the time, but here there's some very funny parts, just like in some of the originals. We will get into this later with some of the new characters, but Ducky and Bunny, voiced by Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele, are, I think, hilarious, and all of their jokes land. Even some of the antics that they get up to and the other characters, particularly Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, have to respond to them, and even that timing works really well. So I think there's lots of humor in this movie that works. I had mentioned in my review for Toy Story 1 and 2 that I do really appreciate there being an anchor song, which were You've Got a Friend in Me in the first one, and When She Loved Me by Sarah McLachlan in the second one. And then Toy Story 3, I didn't think had an anchor song, or at least one that stood out to me. Here in Toy Story 4, Randy Newman does have an original song called I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away, and it's fine. It's okay. It's nowhere near the quality of those first two, but I do like that there is an anchor song in Toy Story 4, so I have to count that as a positive. Some of the new characters are also really fun. I mentioned Ducky and Bunny before, and I think they're great, especially how they keep wanting to reveal themselves to humans and not really caring about that, but Bonnie's toys are very much against that, and I think that's a funny contrast. I also really like Duke Kaboom, voiced by Keanu Reeves, who's a very Canadian stuntman car, and just the way that he's animated and the way that he interacts with the other characters and what he has to overcome as a character, which is actually kind of inspiring. I think that's kind of funny. I also really like that there are some Combat Carls in this movie that is just a really cool toy name that was introduced in the first movie just verbally. But I think that it's fun that we actually get to see the Combat Carls in action. And then for negatives, I think the concept of Forky is a little bit concerning, and I just don't think it works. I see what the producers and director of this movie were going for, which is kind of the next step of, if a child makes a toy craft, is that toy in the same category as all these other toys? So I think it's an interesting thing to explore, but it's just disturbing, and how they make it that Forky thinks he's trash, so he's constantly trying to throw himself into the trash. I know they play it off for laughs, but it's just so heavy-handed that I think it sends almost the wrong message by accident. So I just don't really love that. And then I know that this is a fictional universe, of course, and the toys don't really come to life when we're not looking at them. But just the concept of, well, because a child made Forky and it becomes sentient, so at what point does that stop? adults made everything else. So does everything become sentient when humans aren't around? Clearly no, it's just toys. But why is it just toys? I know I'm asking a lot for the world building of Toy Story, but just introducing the concept of Forky in this movie kind of unravels a lot of the magic for me, where it's not quite as much fun. So I think the concept of this movie sort of takes the whole movie in the wrong direction. And finally, there are some sequences that I think are genuinely scary. And I'm not saying that we can't have some scares in a children's movie, but I think the scenes with the ventriloquist dummies in the antique store are very scary when Woody, voiced by Tom Hanks, is running away and he's genuinely afraid. Those ventriloquist dummies are very scary. And even when they're just walking and patrolling and they have their scary eyes and their scary mouth, it's just a very scary concept for this children's movie. So I think it makes me not want to have the story go in the direction of the antique store. But then as you watch the movie, unfortunately, that's where they spend most of their time. So you're kind of stuck with this uncomfortable thing. And maybe that's what the movie makers were going for. I just think that's a negative and doesn't really work in this movie. I also feel that this movie, like I felt about in Toy Story 3, doesn't have heart. I think Toy Story 3 had emotions but was lacking heart. I think this movie is lacking both emotions and heart. I don't know exactly how to put my finger on it. It feels bland, it feels generic, and a lot of people felt like they shouldn't do a Toy Story 3 because the first two are so good, and a lot of people do love Toy Story 3. So then they feel like, wow, what a beautiful trilogy, and it puts a really nice button at the end where Andy gives the toys to Bonnie and he's kind of done. So the story of these toys is over. And then when Disney Pixar decided they were going to make Toy Story 4, it felt like, where are you going to go from here? So then the concept of this movie was to go in this direction, and I just think that doesn't work. So we're missing the heart that we had, and then there's just not a lot of emotions. It just kind of feels like we're not really attached to Bonnie yet, and then these characters are in a new predicament, but they're all kind of dealing with it differerly, and I just feel like it doesn't come across in the same way as the other movies did. Now, how might Toy Story 4 connect to Toy Story 5? Woody, Buzz, Bo Peep, Jessie, Bullseye, Ham, and Rex are all expected to return in Toy Story 5, voiced by the same voice actors. Slinky Dog, who was voiced by Jim Varney, will be voiced by Blake Clark. Mr. Potato Head, who was voiced by Don Rickles, will be voiced by Jeff Bergman. And Mrs. Potato Head, who was voiced by Estelle Harris, will be voiced by Anna Vocino. So new voice actors there. And then Bonnie's toys like Dolly, Trixie, Mr. Pricklepants, and Giggle McDimples, I think will all return in Toy Story 5. Duke Kaboom and Combat Carl are going to come back, and then it looks like there's going to be quite a few new toys that Bonnie gets when we get to Toy Story 5. Bonnie herself was voiced by Madeline McGraw in Toy Story 4, but she will now be voiced by Scarlett Spears for Toy Story 5. So a lot of just through-line connections from Toy Story 4 to Toy Story. So that's my review of Toy Story 4. What do you think of this movie, and how do you think it might connect to Toy Story 5? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. Follow Movie Marathons HQ on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and also on Letterboxd, where you can see all of the movie marathons that we have done and are doing right now. The next movie in this marathon is Toy Story 5. We have finally reached the movie we've been waiting for. So I'll have to go see Toy Story 5 next weekend, and then record a non-spoiler review first. And then a few weeks later, I'll post a spoiler review of Toy Story 5. See you at the movies.